Welcome, everyone, to Fantasy Foresight, the podcast. We're your hosts and co-founders of FantasyForesight.com, coming to you from the Rambo Fixture Company studios. I'm Ben.
And I'm Jay.
You ready to get rolling, Jay?
You know it. Let's do this.
All right, let's go. Welcome in, everyone. It is Wednesday, September 9th. We've got our guy Steve at FF_encyclopedia, our first ever non-team Foresight guest and friend of show, Travis Sumpter of Belly Up Sports. And ladies and gentlemen, in just 24 hours from now, the 2020 regular season is back. How you doing tonight, Jay?
Ben, you know how I'm doing tonight. Our first ever guest on the show. We couldn't be more happy to have Travis joining us tonight. And like you said, man, football is less than 24 hours away. All of the offseason preparation, all of the due diligence, the research, the planning. We've all been working on our teams constructing that perfect lineup, and it finally kicks off tomorrow. Let's go. Steve, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
Hey, Basement Steve's doing pretty good. Just down here living that basement life. And yeah, like you guys said, we have the 2020 season kicking off tomorrow. It's really exciting. Finally get to watch what's going to be a lot of really fancy relevant players playing tomorrow. So yeah, happy to be on as always.
How you doing tonight, Trav?
I'm doing great. Just got rid of the wife and kids for a little bit, and looking forward to talking football with you guys.
Yeah,
Living
man.
the high life now.
That's right. And, if you're not familiar with the show, Travis is a regular friend of show on social media. We've never met before, but, social media and fantasy football brings people together in a good way sometimes. And he's always adding content, even from social media while we're on air. It's much appreciated. It's long overdue, and we're glad to have you. So before we get started, if this is your first time listening tonight, just know that we're speaking in terms of single QB, full PPR redraft by default. And all of our fantasy finishes, as well as fantasy points per game calculations, are all based on full PPR, limited to weeks 1 through 16, according to fantasypros.com. And for tonight's episode, we're changing it up a little bit from previous years with our buys and sells series. We think you're going to enjoy it. Tonight, we'll be previewing the fantasy relevant players on Thursday Night Football when the Houston Texans travel to Kansas City to take on the reigning Super Bowl champion Chiefs. I'll lay out some general information about each player on both teams. I'll tell you whether or not Total Foresight is buying or selling each player versus their week 1 aggregate projections. And then Jay, Steve, Travis, and myself will also tell you whether we buy or sell. We'll keep track of all our buys and sells throughout the year and report our progress to maintain accountability. All right, guys, you ready to roll? First up, we have got none other than Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes at home versus the Houston Texans on Thursday Night Football. Kansas City is a 9-point favorite, according to Vegas. The aggregate projection for Pat Mahomes this week is QB2, and Total Foresight likes him as QB2 as well, and we consider that a Total Foresight buy this week. He has got the 7th best Foresight strength of schedule, the 12th ranked offensive line, and at ProFootballFocus.com, the opposing D-line rank for the Houston Texans is 16th, and the opposing secondary rank is 26th. And as far as the weather goes, thanks to the Weather Channel app, Thursday night forecast in Kansas City is 58 degrees, cloudy with light rain developing after midnight, wind 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sounds like some perfect football weather to me, and it's not no Chicago Bears and Green Bay Packers 10-7 show like last year or whatever that super low score was. We have got Deshaun Watson in that brand new massive contract and none other than Pat Mahomes. So, Jay, you're first up, man. Total Foresight likes him as a buy. I'm guessing you do too.
You know I like Pat Mahomes as a buy. My man, 50 touchdown Pat Mahomes. To get to the 50 touchdown mark, he's going to have to maintain quite a pace. So he's going to have to get that thing kicked off early. So we saw him light it up early last season before he picked up that injury. And I expect him to get off to a nice hot start. Like you said, Ben, our Total Foresight rank, it takes into account a number of things, but it also takes into account our fantasy strength of schedule, our Foresight strength of schedule. He has a 7th best this week. That's his offense going against the opposing defense, and you mentioned it. That Houston Texans secondary can get picked apart by Pat Mahomes. He has plenty of weapons. Everybody's healthy at this time. it's all there for him. So, yeah, I'm buying.
All right, that's 2 for 2. Steve, what about you?
You know, I want to sell him just because Jay's buying, just to get under his skin a little bit, but it's extremely difficult to do that. You know, whenever you're trying to say, hey, I want to buy a QB2 finish, that's a pretty steep, finish right there, but it's hard to bet against Mahomes. I mean, what has Houston done to really improve their secondary? We saw Mahomes absolutely torch them. To the tune of like almost 600 yards and like 8 TDs in his 2 contests against him last year. So, if he puts up those kind of numbers again, in week 1, and I have a suspicion that given him with all of his weapons and the people returning on that offense, that he probably will. I can't not buy him. So I reluctantly agree with Jay.
MVP. Say it with me.
All right, Trav, what about you, buddy?
First of all, I think the points on this game is like 54.5, and I'm definitely smashing the over on this. And also, Jay, it's going to be the 60 touchdowns and 6. It's going to be the first one.
Yeah, I like it.
Holmes or bust, baby.
That's right.
Well, it would be unanimous if I bought Pat Mahomes, and I've enjoyed going just head to head with Jay in almost every episode in this preview series, but tonight I'm not going to, at least not yet. Mahomes is just a buy for me, plain and simple. Head coach Andy Reid, that entire team, they're all playing with house money right now. And in this hyper unique offseason, I'm definitely far more confident in teams with top down continuity like the Chiefs, especially during the early weeks of the season. And beyond that, the metrics all line up. Even in a quote off year, playing through a dislocated knee, Pat Mahomes was still 3rd in fantasy points per game, 3rd in consistency, 2nd in QB1 percentage, 2nd in touchdown interception ratio, 2nd in adjusted yards per attempt, and 3rd in deep ball completion percentage. So let me get this straight. The Texans have the 7th worst ranked secondary, and Mahomes has the 2nd best Foresight strength of schedule overall. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty big welcome back night for the NFL, Kansas City, and Pat Mahomes. Football is back, baby. Let's go.
Can I just say before we move on how nice it is to have an ally on the podcast? We got to have guests more often. I got to say, this is fantastic.
Oh, you give it time. Your ridiculousness will come out, and even Trav won't be able to save you. And maybe it starts with our next guy in Kansas City Chiefs tight end, Travis Kelce. Tight end 1 aggregate projection, tight end 1 in total Foresight rank. 3rd best Foresight strength of schedule. Also, the 12th ranked offensive line in the same defensive metrics, 26th ranked secondary for the Texans. So, total Foresight, that's a buy. Jay, what about you?
Man, I want to not buy every single player on the Chiefs offense, but it's tough to bet against any of them. You don't want to get caught trying to pick and choose. But you know what? I'm going to buy Kelce just because he shares the name as our guest. And I know that they're both allies of mine, so I'm going with it. Travis Kelce for the buy.
All right, Steve, you want to make a little more football-related decision on that?
I was going to say sound logic, Jay. But I love it nonetheless. Yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead and sell just because I feel like anytime that someone's projected as the one on the week, like I just said with Mahomes, it's really hard to want to buy someone being projected to finish as the 2. So especially the tight end position, I feel like Kelce, if he's healthy, he'll finish there on the year, but I don't know how many times he'll do that on a weekly basis. And, it's funny because he did torch Houston, I think to the tune of like 10 grabs for $134 and 3 TDs in their divisional historical comeback they had last year. But when they met in week 6, he had 4 receptions for 58 yards. So it just kind of shows you the range of outcomes. And I do think that tomorrow night we're going to kind of see, it's going to be like pick your poison for that Houston secondary. So there could be a reality where they try to bottle up Kelce, especially with what happened fresh in their minds from last postseason. So I'll go ahead and sell on this one.
All right, Trav, what about you?
I'm with Steve here. I'm a sell in this one for Kels. He's been limited in practice this week due to his knee injury. If he does suit up, I think he might see limited action. He might just be more of a goal line situation.
All right. Well, I got to say, I am buying. Kelsey was limited in practice on Monday with a knee, but he was upgraded to full both yesterday and today. Plus, he's not even on the final week 1 injury report. This guy was good enough for PPR wide receiver 6, not tight end, PPR wide receiver 6 overall and wide receiver 8 in fantasy points per game last year. And that was with a Mahomes injury, some backup play, only accounting for 6 total TDs, and being second in drops. I don't expect any of those negatives to reoccur. So my question is, how crazy of a year is Kelsey going to have if Mahomes is 100% Mahomes for 16 games? I think it starts tonight. That secondary's weak, and Kansas City's got something for you. I got to respectfully disagree with Steve and Trav. I think this is one of those flex nights for Travis Kelsey all day.
That's gonna be
league of record. I really hope that's the case.
Yeah, I'm sure you do, sir.
A differentiator pick, man. 2-2 on that one. It's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top.
Yes, and I am, like I said, I'm definitely tracking these as we go through. So, historically, we track the progress of just total Foresight as a team, and there's some debate and some difference of opinion sometimes about who our buys and sells should be, and this takes all that out the window. Everybody is their own decision maker, and we still have that cold hard truth in total Foresight. I have a feeling at the end of the year, total Foresight is going to be the best one, and we're going to be like, why don't we just listen to total Foresight? Exactly. So next up, we have got Kansas City wide receiver once again. This time it's Sammy Watkins. His aggregate projection is a little more interesting than the first 2 guys, as are the rest, where he is currently projected as wide receiver 46. Total Foresight is buying Sammy Watkins only slightly, though, at a wide receiver 41 rank. He, like Travis Kelsey, has the 3rd best Foresight strength of schedule. That Houston secondary, as we've said, is very suspect. So yeah, like I said, total Foresight is buying. What about you, Jay?
Again, it's tough to want to buy everybody, but we saw what Sammy Watkins did when Pat Mahomes was healthy last year. It was a different story after that, a very different story. So, I'm not a Sammy guy, and I know we got to take emotion out of it and just look at the numbers. It's tough for me to want to stake any type of claim on Sammy Watkins, but you know what? It's the first game of the season. I'm doing it. I'm buying Sammy Watkins.
I love it. What about you, Steve?
I'm going to go ahead and sell this one as well.
Hey.
Some of it even going back to last season, he, surprise, wasn't healthy and didn't play week 6 against the Texans. What? But he did in the divisional playoffs. And he caught 2 balls for 78 yards, which isn't bad, but I don't think that's going to end up, getting you to a wide receiver 41 finish on the week. And then I just feel like he's at best the 3rd option for Pat Mahomes in the offense.
Steve,
there's certain
Pat Mahomes is going to throw 7 touchdowns tomorrow night. Who's going to catch him? Everyone's getting in the end zone. Join the party.
Valid
We're
point.
all here. Come on.
If he throws for 550 and 6, Sammy probably will have a nice piece of that pie. But here in reality, he's just a sell for me this week. I believe he's been nursing a groin throughout the training camp, and while he's supposed to be set and ready to go tomorrow, I know, unusual. It's just hard for me to want to get behind Watkins. I'll wait till he shows me a little bit more this season.
Okay. Trav, what about you, buddy? You going to stick with Steve again this round?
I think I'm going to buy. I think 41 is pretty attainable, especially when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback.
All right. I will say this. I will disagree with Total Foresight's buys and sells a couple times tonight, but not yet.
Yeah.
I am buying Sammy too. Last year, Sammy Watkins was 26th in percentage of top 6 wide receiver weeks. Houston has one of the lowest ranked secondaries in the league, and all Sammy has to do is beat wide receiver 46. Yes, I will take that bet. Remember, in the 2019 playoffs, when it mattered most, Sammy averaged 95 receiving yards per game, and in the regular season prior to Mahomes' injury, Sammy averaged a massive 9.3 3 targets per game. I do expect Pat Mahomes to feast and for the Chiefs offense to put up 40 points. And I think wide receiver 46 is going to be something that in week 1, before he does get really hurt, is something that he can go ahead and attain. So that, Steve, you're the Lone Ranger on that one. We'll have to see how that one shakes out. So far, I gotta be honest. Total Foresight is historically very accurate with their sells, and we are going to cover 12 players tonight. And Total Foresight is selling 8 of them. So Total Foresight has the haterade out. Maybe Steve and Total Foresight are on the same page. We're just going to have to keep on going and find out. Next up, we're going to finally switch to the other team and go over to the Houston Texans, who are at Kansas City on Thursday Night Football as well. And we're going to talk about wide receiver Randall Cobb. He is currently projected as wide receiver 67. Total Foresight likes him as wide receiver 55. So that is a emphatic buy from Total Foresight. And the Foresight strength of schedule for the Houston wide receivers is tied for 19th. They have the 19th ranked offensive line, and their opposing D-line for Kansas City is ranked 15th. And the opposing secondary is not all that highly ranked either at 23rd. Again, another, well, now I just spoiled it. It's the last of the buys on this episode, at least from Total Foresight's perspective. So what about you, Jay? Buy or sell Randall Cobb at wide receiver 67?
Man, this is the one that I really had a hard time with, because I don't want to rely on it, but you have Cooks, who's looking very iffy on playing tomorrow night. I don't know if he's been ruled out yet, but it looks like it's pretty doubtful. So, there's limited targets then, so you would think Cobb would go up, and he only has to beat wide receiver 67. Oh, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to. I'm going to buy Randall Cobb. Oh,
okay.
Oh, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good.
Don't worry. I have one later where I'm literally going to have to leave the episode after I buy it to take a shower. So trust me, I understand. Steve, what about you? Randall Cobb, wide receiver 67, buy or sell?
I'm right there with you, Jay. It feels dirty. You feel like you got to go take a bath, a nice long bubble bath with some nice candles.
But the opportunity is going to be there. It's like,
maybe that's just me that does that. But and that's the whole thing is, I think even with Brandon Cooks in the lineup, that could even in some ways help Randall Cobb a little bit. Like when these two teams played each other last year, Deshaun Watson threw the ball 42 times and 52 times. It's 94 pass attempts. That's a lot of targets. He doesn't particularly target running backs and tight ends too much. He usually doesn't target the slot, but he hasn't really had slot receivers his entire career. I mean, there was that little flash of Kiki Kuti when he was healthy for a whole 3 weeks, and he got peppered with targets. So, I just kind of feel like the game script is going to lend towards him, grossly, albeit. Like I could see him ending at wide receiver 41 for the week. And in, PPR, that's perfectly fine. And that would certainly exceed wide receiver 55. So, or in this case, wide receiver 67 by a landslide. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to buy Randall Cobb this week.
Yep. In our preview podcast, we always talk about how it's relative to the ADP price tag, and it's all relative to that aggregate projection, man. So I hear you. So what about you, Trav? Are you reluctantly buying, or are you going to sell Randall Cobb?
I won't reluctantly buy. I'll buy him all the way. I'm going to go I'm going to go with the Foresight here, and I figured he will get his normal, volume that he usually gets. And this is actually one of the first seasons that Cobb's coming in and he's healthy and he's ready to go. And you haven't heard him a lot on the injury report even last year. So he's been pretty healthy as of late. And especially if Cooks is out, he could be a real boom player for the week. I could see top 30.
I'm right there with you, Trav. I love that take. I liked Randall Cobb this week before Brandon Cooks was listed as questionable because the anticipated negative game script. I mean, but now with Cooks either limited severely or out, forget about it. With all the vacated DeAndre Hopkins targets and with potentially a limited or even an absent Brandon Cooks, I think Randall Cobb is going to see far more volume than is needed to eclipse a ridiculous wide receiver 67 aggregate projection. He was wide receiver 45 overall last year off just 77 total targets. He may get 77 total targets this week. I mean, coming back from Pat Mahomes' 800 touchdowns,
well,
so it's going to be a big week. And I think, like I said, Randall Cobb is a player that I like, as a sneaky play anyways. And then you tell me that the Brandon Cooks targets might be available as well. Whew.
Especially in DFS play, it'd be a really good play.
Ooh, very good point there. Absolutely.
Low
Jay, it seemed like
it
seemed like you were going to add something else in about Randall
Nope,
Cobb
I'm
there.
just waiting to dive into our buys because, or ourselves. I mean, historically last season, Total Foresight was extremely accurate on sells, and this is the side of the equation that I really have a bone to pick on a few players, so I'm a little fearful now. It didn't feel great on some of the buys. It's really going to be hard now on some of the sells.
Well, I mean, you don't have to disagree all the time, but we'll just see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. And then, the beauty of all this is we get to see what actually happens. And we, on this podcast, come back and talk about former takes and talk about who was right and who was wrong.
I want to win.
I'm sure you do, brother. Next up, we've got Houston Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson. He is currently projected as QB3 on the week. Total Foresight gives the man the respect he is due, but is a sell because it likes him as QB5. According to Foresight Strength of Schedule, Deshaun Watson is facing the 20th ranked strength of schedule this week. He only has the 19th ranked offensive line. Kansas City's front is ranked 15th and their secondary is ranked 23rd. So, I mean, he's got some things to work with, but, Total Foresight just isn't quite as high as QB3. What about you, Jay?
I want to sell Deshaun Watson too. I think he's going to be good, but QB3, man, that's just, Steve, like you were alluding to with Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce, that's a very steep price tag. And, look, the Texans are going into the very difficult Chiefs. They're not going to have a difficult atmosphere. That's right.
Yes, sir. Good point.
Yeah. So, but no, I'm going to sell Deshaun. I think that again, he has a nice performance at Kansas City. The game script is certainly going to be there for him, but with the lack of weapons, losing Nooks, some questionable health with Cooks, getting to know some new guys in that offense, and Kansas City's defense is decent, so I'm going to sell him as QB3.
All right. Steve, what about you?
I'm going to absolutely buy Watson this week, and for a couple of different reasons. First and foremost is I just think that this team, they beat Kansas City in week 6 last season. Obviously had a historical collapse in the playoffs last year, but I think that's going to be a lot more fresh, like as a wound for Houston than Kansas City is going to care to remember, because they're the Super Bowl champs. Everything's gravy right now for them. And I just think, like, just from a football perspective, I think Houston's going to come into the game pretty hungry, and Watson's going to be on his A game. And again, just the volume that's going to be there. In their 2 games last season, I think Watson, I know he ran for 3 combined touchdowns, and I think it was close to like 80 combined yards, but it's just a good reminder of, like, not only is he probably going to approach 300 passing yards just off of pure volume, but he's going to have a little bit of that extra added oomph on the ground. So I just think, just based off of volume and game script and his talent, and he does have some decent weapons around him, that he's going to end up getting to that above QB5 projection. So I'm going to go ahead and make this like one of my only, hopefully 1 or 2 go against Total Foresights, and buy.
I was going to say, Basement Steve's the contrarian tonight. I love it. It's, what? I wanted diversity. I did not. Part of the beauty of getting all the different perspectives is to get some varying opinions, unlike last year where there was 4 total entities between our 3 minds and Total Foresight, and we're only talking about one perspective. I think this adds to it, and I love it. What do you think, Trav? What, you buying or selling Deshaun Watson at aggregate projection QB3?
3 is pretty high. I do love Watson in this game, but because of game script and like Vegas has, like I said, at 54.5, I believe that was the last thing I seen, and so it's going to be a high scoring game, and there's going to be a lot of throwing going on, because I game script in my mind says Houston's going to be playing from behind a lot in this game. One other thing I wanted to mention is Watson, I think, will have a great game. And, for me, I have him as my MVP candidate this season. It's just written all over it. I feel like he can really carry this team if he needs to.
I will agree with that, Travis, and I am also going to sell. I think Deshaun Watson has MVP potential this year. I do think it cannot be overstated about the adjustment he's going to have to make for the first time in his career, not having DeAndre Hopkins. And then he's also getting in 2 new wide receivers and Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb. I love Deshaun Watson, and I'll also add this. Few things have warmed my heart this offseason, like when I watched him react to his family on NFL Network after signing his massive contract extension. With all the crap in the world, man, that's some beautiful stuff to watch with the NFL coming back. However, in week 1 on the road in his first game without DeAndre Hopkins, I think QB3 is a bit too aggressive, even though Kansas City secondary is ranked 23rd to 32. To even have a shot at QB3 this week, he'll need to have a lot of success on the ground like he has before, like Steve mentioned. And I just got to be honest, I'm not willing to take that bet this week. I don't think Fuller as the deep threat wide receiver 1 is scaring any defenses around the league. And let's see how great he is without D-Hop. And that's when he can even stay on the field. And now you got a problem with Brandon Cooks being able to be available and on the field. And all of a sudden you're telling me that he's got a couple of running backs and Randall Cobb to throw to and Darren Fells. He's going to have to put on the cape and be Superman.
That's it, Ben. I think Deshaun Watson is a QB1 this week, no questions, but there are always enough fluky performances week to week that betting on a QB3 return is just, I just have a hard time getting on board with that.
You're right, and you made me think of another great point, is that there's going to be, I think defenses are going to be a bit more behind than usual with this unique offseason, and I think there's going to be a lot of offenses that thrive against those hapless defenses this week. And, it sounds crazy, but even somebody like Jimmy G at home versus the Arizona Cardinals garbage defense, you got all kinds of different options in a 1 week scenario where, like you said, it's a whole lot easier to not be QB3 than it is to be QB3. And as much as I love Deshaun Watson, I just think he's got a few too many things against him at this point in the season for QB3.
And before we move on, I'm sorry, Travis, we'll get right to you here in just a second. I just was thinking about, and I'm like, it's probably going to be pretty unique given, what we do know about the quarterback position in fantasy, to actually have Pat Mahomes be a bye and Deshaun Watson be a bye in the exact same game. So I'm planting my flag with Deshaun Watson. Mark me down for it. I'm selling. Right. I'm selling on Mahomes this week.
Steve.
I just have a feeling that Houston.
You're changing your buy from Mahomes to a sell. That's the news.
Yeah, that he won't finish QB2. Doesn't mean he couldn't be top 5. It's just I'm more confident and. I just
let it be written. And
Travis
let it be
pointed out that the
so.
over-under is 55 points. Kansas City's going to put up 49 of those 55 points. What are you doing?
Oh, that's hilarious. Steve, I love it. And I have had an emotional connection to Deshaun Watson ever since all we had to do was turn in the card. I love Baker May, and I hope he has massive. Yes, I love Baker May, and I hope he has a massive shut everybody up season. But man, Deshaun Watson has always been somebody I've rooted for from day one. His backstory is amazing. See the type of character that he is every week, every year. And then, we see how some people react when they sign these big contracts out. He's spending that with a Zoom call with his family. And like I said, it's just a great thing to watch. I hate selling him. I hate going against him, but just not quite this week. There will be other weeks that I buy Deshaun Watson all day.
Yeah, one thing I was going to point out too, you also have the Saints and Buccaneers game this Sunday too, and I could see that being a real dual shootout game.
Yeah.
So that could, and with Mahomes, so I think that could push Watson outside the top 3.
It's another good point, Trav. And then next up, we've got a podcast favorite topic here. Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Tyreek Hill, Jay. He is currently projected as the wide receiver 4. What you going to do? Total Foresight is selling wide receiver 7. Still a middle of the road wide receiver 1. Remember, we're not always telling you on our sells to not start a guy or anything like that. But the name of the game is going against the aggregate projection. And so Total Foresight is slightly selling that wide receiver 4, even though he's got the 3rd best Foresight strength of schedule and that 26th ranked Houston defensive secondary. So what do you think, Jay? You going with Total Foresight on this one?
Man, the light rain in the forecast worries me a little bit, but man, first game out of the gates. It's amazing that we're sitting here thinking that Kansas City is going to come out first game and just light it up, because you do have that Super Bowl hangover so frequently with teams. So man, can they all possibly exceed expectations? I'm going to agree with Total Foresight, and I'm going to sell Tyreek Hill as WR4. I think we maybe get that typical Tyreek seminal moment where he's waving at the defender as he's going into the end zone. But again, a WR4 to meet or exceed that, there's going to be enough fluky performances and surprise performances that I'm just afraid to buy based on WR4 price tag.
Well, hey, if it makes you feel any better, Jay, as far as your sell's concerned, again, just reflecting back on these two teams playing each other, and I know a lot changes year to year, but we saw Tyreek Hill have 5 grabs for 80 yards, 2 touchdowns in week 2, but we don't want to rely on touchdowns necessarily, so you just look at the 5 for 80 and it's not necessarily impressive. But then in the divisional playoff game, you would look at Mahomes throwing 5 touchdowns in this historical comeback, and you would think that Tyreek Hill was a bigger part of that, but he only caught 3 balls for 41 yards. So, that was a Travis Kelce show. So again, it's with this offense, it's just for any defense, it's like, well, pick your poison. So It's really hard. Here's the thing. Every single week, I'd probably sell on an aggregate projection of wide receiver 4, no matter how much of a smash matchup it is, because it's kind of a smash matchup then for a lot of the guys on this offense. And there's going to be weeks where Tyreek Hill would probably smash that aggregate projection, but more times than not, he's not going to. So, I'm going to go ahead and sell in this instance, just based on, I think that mathematically playing the odds, there's a better chance that he doesn't than he does.
All right. What about you, Trav?
I got down in my notes here is that, all Hill needs is one big play to make something happen, but I'm actually going to be a sell here too.
Oh, all right.
I just don't see him maybe finding the touchdown this week. So, I kind of can see catch him more in the teens this week as far as a finish.
And again, he could finish with 5 grabs for 80 yards and a touchdown and still finish outside of WR4 overall. So he could still have a nice game and not get in the top 3.
Yeah, this is the only the second time in 6 players where we are all unanimous with Total Foresight. I am selling as well. In any given week, Tyreek can be the wide receiver 1 overall in that Kansas City Chiefs offense. And Tyreek may well get in the end zone this week, but wide receiver 4, I just don't know. He was 18th in consistency last year, 29th in consistency from weeks 10 to 16, and just wide receiver 9 in fantasy points per game. This doesn't feel like a dream matchup or a game script that's going to continually force the Chiefs to pass like for 60 minutes. So thus, I just can't get behind wide receiver 4 this week for Tyreek. I mean, I think he's still going to be a fine play. But I think, we have to pick our spots in this offense, and I am somebody that is buying Sammy Watkins. I'm somebody that's buying Travis Kelce. So I've got to sell somewhere. And while I'm definitely not suggesting you don't start Tyreek Hill, I just can't buy that wide receiver 4 projection this week.
Listen, if I'm betting my money, I'm selling Tyreek Hill. If I'm betting Ben's money, I'm buying Tyreek Hill.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right, next up, we have got the player to discuss in this game. Kansas City Chiefs brand new shiny running back, Clyde Edwards-Elaire. He is the aggregate projection RB9, never played a snap in the NFL, and he is going to be a rock solid projected RB1 right off the bat. Total Foresight says just pump the brakes a little bit. Likes him as RB14 in his first week in the NFL with a 15th ranked Foresight strength of schedule, 12th ranked offensive line, and the defensive front for the Texans is ranked middle of the road at 16th. But right now, J.J. Watt's healthy, and that makes all the difference in the world. Jay, Total Foresight selling. What about you?
You know, expectations are sky high for CEH for this season and obviously for this week, having an aggregate projection of RB9. He can't possibly have the first game out of the gates that Kareem Hunt had also. I mean, it's just too good to be true to just burst onto the scene and live up to such lofty expectations everybody has. And you know what? Just personally, I want to see the fantasy industry and fantasy world just get a little bit worried about the guy who they've crowned as the next great running back. So I'm gonna say he's gonna finish in, 15 to 20 carries, 60 to 80 yards, might get in the end zone once, but I really like Total Foresight's rank. I feel like it's much more realistic for the first week. And you know what, guys? As much as we joke and as much as Vegas expects this to be a high-scoring game, I could just as easily see it being a little bit of a, feel your way through it. It's the first game of the season, no preseason reps or true games. And it could be a little bit of a dogfight early on before it opens up a little bit. So maybe the stats really aren't there like we expect it to be. So, you know what? I'm going to sell Clyde Edwards-Helaire at RB9.
All right, Steve, what about you?
So, it's really funny because I want all the shares of CEH.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to get any, but I want them. Yeah. I believe in them. I think with his talent in this offense, the touches he'll get on the ground, more importantly, probably through the air, that would carry him quite a bit. However, in week one, I can't ignore, the reports about Daryl Williams in camp and, what he is the holdover in this offense, right, at the running back position. He knows it. He's the better guy in pass protection. He's looked okay. He's looked probably better than okay a couple of times last season when he had to work in some spot duty. So the fact that they're going to try to ease CEH into his first game as a rookie with no, without that normal like preseason that we're accustomed to, it worries me a little bit as far as wanting to project him to finish at RB9. And then I went back again, just looking at how these game scripts played out last year. How did Kansas City use their running backs in the two contests last year? Well, in week 6, which was a relatively close game, 24-31, 9 running back carries the entire game for the Kansas City offense. In that divisional game, which, they did have to storm back from behind, but they did get on top of Houston and were in a position to kind of grind it out, at least there in the fourth quarter, 12 total running back carries. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's just not a lot of carries to go around for the Kansas City running backs, which would mean if the backfield's, even if it's 60-40 CEH, I don't see him getting a lot of carries. So he better really tear it up through the air to hit RB9. So that's my long-winded way of saying – so,
what about you, Trav?
Well, first of all, one of my league mates in my home league, he commented in, should he sell CEH to me? And I actually offered him Dalvin Cook today for CEH. So if that tells you anything, I am a buyer of CEH this week. I look for Nick. Yes.
Nick, you should definitely make that deal with Travis. Go ahead and give him Trav, that's it. I like it.
I do worry about the splits in the carry zone, this kind of being a committee between the two backs. But I do look for Andy Reid to showboat his Super Bowl prize out there in week 1 and show the world that he made the right pick with that pick.
I like it.
So that is a buy for you to meet or exceed RB9 in week 1, Trav?
Hell yes, it is.
All right. I like love the enthusiasm because you are the Lone Ranger on this one, my brother, because I am selling an aggregate projection of RB9 for a rookie who's never played in the preseason, who barely got any sort of an offseason. It is week 1, and I just have this sneaky suspicion that CEH is going to disappoint. And like Jay said, It'll be really interesting to watch all those with CEH shares squirm after this week. And then Steve, you stole a little bit of my thunder. Darryl Williams is reported to be the team's better pass blocking back and is definitely going to be involved. But the question is, how much? That specific question in this specific opening week is the primary reason I'm hesitant on CEH in week 1. Now, of course, now that I said this, like Travis said, Andy Reid will introduce CEH to the world by featuring him and putting him on the map with a monstrous first NFL game's worth of total touches. If I would have bought him, it would be the disappointment. If I sell, Andy Reid's going to do what Andy Reid does and say, look at me and all my cheeseburgers that I get for free because of my Super Bowl rings and things like that. I love the Chiefs, man. They're just great TV. I just can't wait for this game tomorrow.
I can't wait for this next group of players. Here we go.
I was just going to say, anything else on CEH before we move on? I don't want to rush anyone off, but okay. Next up, we have got Houston Texans wide receiver Will Fuller. Total Foresight agrees with you, Jay, but not by a lot. The aggregate projection for Will Fuller is wide receiver 36. Total Foresight likes him just a tick behind that at wide receiver 38. Again, the Houston Texans wide receivers are tied for the 19th ranked Foresight strength of schedule. They have a not great 19th ranked offensive line, but Kansas City Chiefs secondary is only ranked 23rd, not the most insurmountable in the world. So, Jay, I already heard you. You were selling. Why don't you elaborate?
Well, here's the thing. Will Fuller is either going to finish as WR3 overall or WR103 overall. And more often than not, it's the 103. And I don't know if he's going to make it the entire game without, some kind of soft tissue injury or something like that. No preseason. You always see a propensity for that kind of thing. And as much as I joke about it, I can't bet and feel good about having Will Fuller meet or exceed any type of projection. I'm sorry, I'm out. I can't do it. I can't remove the emotion. Sue me. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. What about you, Steve-O?
It pains me.
Fire up the shower.
Jay, but yeah, it's funny. So I looked at this about a half hour before we got on for the podcast, and I think I've changed my mind on this one a half dozen times at this point in time, just because I just keep looking at it and I'm like, wide receiver 36. That seems, given the circumstances, given the game script, the pass attempts, very easy for him to obtain. And I'm not worried about him necessarily, like popping a hammy and having to sit the game out, but I think I'm going to go ahead and sell. And I think the primary reason for me is, especially if Brandon Cooks is out. And I think that at this point in time, if he plays, he's going to be limited in his snaps and he's not going to be out there. And guys, we've seen Will Fuller get faded in games when he has one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League playing opposite of him that is getting the full attention of the defense in the passing game. So to me, it's just more betting against Will Fuller being an alpha wide receiver if he has to be one tomorrow night. So that's kind of what I'm betting against and why I'm selling. And Kansas City, they do have a better secondary, a lot better one than I think a lot of people give them credit for. And I think that if they do try to take Will Fuller out of the game, until I'm proven wrong, I don't think he's the kind of wide receiver that can overcome that kind of attention.
You know what, Steve? You're a smart guy.
He is a smart guy. Trav, what do you think? Buy or sell Will Fuller in week 1 at wide receiver 36?
Does scare me a little bit with Cooks possibly being out tomorrow, that Fuller's going to see more looks on the defense, and I do think he's the biggest boom player in this game possibly. He's when he's been on the field, he's been spectacular, and he's had monster games. But unfortunately, I'm going to be a seller also in this one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guess what? This is the dirty I was alluding to before, where I am the Lone Ranger. I am the only one that is, buying Will Fuller. I get it. Trust me, I get it. It will be very interesting to see how he is as the guy, as the wide receiver 1, especially if Brandon Cooks is not playing. That said, as far as the injury is concerned. Our guy Russ, our resident PT at Fantasy Foresight, said don't bet on an injury week 1. And he's right. In week 1, he hasn't gotten hurt yet, to my knowledge. So I feel like he should see 9 to 10 targets against the secondary that, it is improved, but it's not the most stout in the world. Thus, for this week only, I am buying Will Fuller versus an aggregate projection of wide receiver 36. And now, like I said before, you're going to have to do the rest of the show without me. I'm going to go take a shower. Here's the thing. The guy only finished better than wide receiver 34 twice last year. And he was 58th in wide receiver 3 percentage. But, I've made my decision. I'm not going to talk myself out of it. He is the wide receiver 1 on an NFL team this week. And, aggregate projected wide receiver 36 is something in a game script where they're going to be very down. Maybe it's not until garbage time, but I expect him to beat that wide receiver 36 aggregate projection. I hate myself a little bit for it, but I'm going to go out on that limb to try and be accurate.
Hey, Ben, really quick before we move on, because I don't want to forget about it by the time we're done, but when Jay was saying something about me being smart, can you edit that out, send me the sound clip? Because that is going to be my new ringtone.
Sure. We'll call our friends at Clipcast, and I'm sure they'll make that their priority number 1.
Beautiful. Yeah, if y'all can make that happen for me, I'll be a very happy person.
Perfect. So moving on to another very interesting name. We're going back over to the Kansas City Chiefs one more time in this episode for their wide receiver, second year, Mecole Hardman. His aggregate projection is only wide receiver 68, and yet Total Foresight is still selling him, giving him a ranking of wide receiver 73. Like, Total Foresight, have you heard of Pat Mahomes, bud? The third best overall Foresight strength of schedule, again, that Houston secondary is suspect. It's not going to take a lot for a wide receiver with Pat Mahomes to outproduce wide receiver 68. Total Foresight disagrees. What about you, Jay?
Even if this game gets off to a sleepy start, which I really hope it does not, outperforming wide receiver 68 in that offense when, the Chiefs are going to rack up 500-600 yards of total offense, most of that from my guy Pat Mahomes' arm. That's going to be easy to eclipse. Got no problem with that. I'm buying Mecole Hardman.
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you on this one. And a lot of it for me went when I was going through these, I'm like, well, sell. I eventually need to buy somebody for that to, for this to make any sense. But
just wait.
Yes, of course. But yeah, I'm right there with you guys. Like, wide receiver 68, it's not going to take a whole lot. It could just be that one boom play. And I do think that Kansas City is going to try to find, some additional ways to get the ball in this kid's hands. 2020 season, and all it'll take is that one. And I really do think that, Houston, they're either going to focus on trying to take Hill out of the game or Kelsey out of the game. And I already told you about my concerns about, Watkins heading into this one, just how healthy he'll actually be. So I think, Hardman can certainly be a sneaky play and could certainly exceed wide receiver 68. So I'll buy it.
All right. Trav, what about you?
I'm going to sell on this one. I just don't see him getting the type of volume that's needed to surpass that number in this game. I just don't see him getting a touchdown. I just don't see, where he's really going to be much involved in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I got to give it to you. He's not always a featured player, obviously, in that offense. It's kind of a gadgety type role where they try to look to ways to get him involved. So, yeah, I mean, the volume is certainly a concern. He's just a guy that, in my opinion, could have 3 grabs for 68 yards. Just break one off and make me right.
Well, and he was limited to that gadget role last year as a rookie, and he flashed in very limited touches last year. But remember, he had over 500 yards receiving on just 25 receptions and 40 targets. However, even with those limited targets, he finished better than his current week 1 aggregate projection of wide receiver 68 in more than half of his games last year. And this year, I expect his targets to at least double to 80. So that makes him an easy week 1 buy for me in this plus matchup.
That's great. Let's move on to the next guy.
Well, I was going to mention one more thing too about Hardman is that I could see like him taking over in this offense over Sammy Watkins, especially if there was an injury, of course. But I could see where the progression of Hardman, climbs throughout the season, where he's getting more and more involved. By the time we get to the playoffs, he might be a really good player to have on your roster.
Travis, excellent point. Super excited to have you on the show, but it's time for us to get down to business.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no. This is David.
Hey, here we go.
Bye.
Didn't take very long, ladies and gentlemen. If you listen to this preview podcast, DJ is this year's 2019 Derrick Henry as far as invoking civil war.
Now he catches. Okay, you're right there. You're right. Yeah, you're right there.
So, calm down. I've just set the table for people. You and I will get your chance. But Total Foresight disagrees with you, Jay. The crown jewel thinks Houston Texans running back David Johnson will not live up to an aggregate projection of RB17 and clocks him in at a much more reasonable RB24. He has also the 12th best Foresight strength of schedule. He has not a great offensive line, and he's going up against a middle-of-the-road defensive front. That, like I said, includes J.J. Watt. So, Jay, I know you're buying. So you expect DJ to turn in this week RB17 or better.
I called him a rock-solid RB2. Somebody on that offense has to catch passes. David Johnson's motivated to get his career back on track. I think that team, like you said before, a coaching staff may want to push out there something that they paid dearly for. They paid quite a price tag to bring David Johnson in. I don't think they want to show their fan base how wrong they were in that transaction because they were lambasted pretty much by everybody in football. So, yeah, I think he's obviously going to get the opportunities. He's the man in that backfield. They're going to have to throw the ball. Game script is there for him. He's a great catching back. So, yeah, I'm going to buy him at RB17.
All right. Steve-O, what about you?
Oh, my goodness.
Don't be dumb, Steve.
No. So I'm not even kidding around, guys. The reason I say, oh, my goodness, I was looking at the notes I wrote up a little bit ago, and I think that I'm going to have to go ahead and I hate to be this guy, but now sell Deshaun Watson also because hear me.
No more of this next
you are flipping all over the place.
Week. You get one chance at your answers, and that's it.
Are you a politician? Just flip-flopping all over the place. What's going on here?
And we got an election coming up, but
for president.
That's right.
Nice.
That's
Travis.
Right.
That is a nice plug.
Every one of you get out of here.
Well, so as we talked through it tonight, the more and more, I've thought through some of these, I've really been getting behind, I think that Houston's probably going to give us a lot better game than we're giving them credit for. And last season, the game Houston won, it was Carlos Hyde with 26 carries for over 100 yards. And there's no mystery why Kansas City only scored 24 points in that game. It's, Houston controlled the ball on the ground. And the more I think about it, I'm like, they're certainly going to try. And Jay, you made a really good point that I don't doubt Bill O'Brien's going to really, really try. And it doesn't just have to be on the ground. They will find ways to get him the ball through the air, however they can. So it's a matter of if they can come out and they can get something established with David Johnson, which, again, just looking at this from a week 1 perspective, week 1, this is their Super Bowl. I'm not worried about rest of season performance. David Johnson's healthy. He's going to get fed the rock probably as much as he can take until he drops over in this game.
No.
So 3 carries?
So with all that said, I'm still going to go ahead and sell David Johnson.
Okay, there we go. Pulling it out at the end. That's what Travis, I like to hear.
Go,
so
buddy.
Are you still – let me ask you a quick question. Hold on.
I'm going to buy – I'm still buying Deshaun Watson. Watson.
Buying Deshaun Watson and selling. Oh man, you're making me do all kinds of copy and paste.
Oh yeah, because you're keeping track of that live on air. My apologies, Ben. I'll definitely keep that in mind for next week. And yeah, I just wanted to have I just was having a fun time with an emotional roller coaster right there with Jay. Like, do I agree? Do I disagree? But yeah, I'm going to sell that running back 17. But I do think he will land in the RB2 range. I can't put him as like a mid one. I think
he's like
best. So
I got you, Steve. And Jay's like, hey guys, can my friend come over so he can agree with me? Go ahead,
right.
Trav.
Let's do this.
So a little backstory here. We're going to start off with. David Johnson, he's from my hometown of Clinton, Iowa, just south of me. Him and my little brother, they were childhood friends, and they would spend nights at each other's house. Me and my brother didn't grow up together, obviously. Otherwise, I would have met David Johnson myself when we were kids. So, he's always been a player I've always wanted on my roster. I've never gotten him. Like, every year, somebody's always ahead of me in the draft. I just could never get him. This year in the Fantasy Foresight Challenge 2, I actually secured him. He is my RB2. So the first time I got a share of David Johnson is this year.
Love it.
This game though, it's not the week to trot him out there.
Come on, Travis!
Not at that price point.
Come on. That's
Boom.
fine. That's fine.
Travis dropping bombs, and I haven't even gone yet.
I'm here
Mr.
on the
Hayes.
David Johnson Island, and I don't care.
That's right. Here we go, Jay. If DJ stays healthy, and that's a big if, he is not going to be anything close to the guy he was in weeks 1 through 6 last year in Cliff Kingsbury offense. And you know why? Because Bill O'Brien is now his GM and head coach. Yikes. DJ's early 2019 success was largely supported by 41 targets over just his first 6 weeks. You know how many targets Carlos Hyde had in the DJ role in Bill O'Brien's offense last year total all season? 16. Duke Johnson, an underused stud who's still there, had 62 targets last year as an RB pass catching specialist. Without pass catching upside for David Johnson, there's just no way I'm buying RB 17 this week in a negative game script for the Texans, where I honestly expect Duke Johnson to see 6 or more targets because the Houston Texans are going to be down in that game and fast.
God, our next episode is going to be so much fun.
Why? One thing you going to pick them now, or are you going to get ready? Tell me why the next episode is going to be so much fun. I don't understand.
Because we're going to get to review these picks, and you guys are going to get to eat crow.
We do have one episode between that. We got another one tomorrow.
Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying though. Yeah, it's, you know what? It's going to be the day of reckoning is coming for one of us.
Fantasy Foresight. This might be the last season of Fantasy Foresight.
No, it's just going to be how many different colors can Jay dye his hair because he keeps making bad fantasy bets. All right, we've got 2 left to go tonight on this, for the season opener kickoff episode. And we've got the real DJ. Jay, timeout. We're going to take a pause in this episode. Jay, would you like to play a game?
Sure. I'll humor you. Sure.
Okay. I've heard this done on a couple other podcasts, and I just randomly brought it up. And I think it's time for us to play. Which DJ is this? David Johnson or Duke Johnson?
Oh.
Last season.
Duke Johnson.
Just listen, 94 rush attempts or 79 rush attempts. So 94 rush attempts and 79. Those are your 2 options. Which one? Which one is which? Who had more?
Duke had more.
No, you're wrong. It was David Johnson. Last year, 5 yards per carry on the ground. David Johnson or Duke Johnson?
I'm going to say Duke Johnson at 5 yards per carry.
You're absolutely right. Long rush, 18 yards, 40 yards. Which one of those is David Johnson?
Duke had a 40-yarder.
Yep, you're absolutely right. One of these running backs had 3 20-plus yard runs. Which of them do you think that was?
Hey, did Duke Johnson ever have 2,000 yards all-purpose in a season?
Hey, we are talking about right here and right now.
No, you're talking about last season.
Yes.
I'm talking about this season.
You're talking about years ago, several injuries ago, several teams ago.
Whatever.
And then last year was an ankle, it was a back, it was everything on his body.
It was also Cliff Kingsbury.
Who had more receptions last year, Duke or David Johnson?
I'm sure Duke did.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you see, here's the thing: Duke's not going anywhere, and Carlos Hyde this is a role-oriented run offense. Duke Johnson has his role. David Johnson is sliding into that 241 attempts for 1,057 yards that Carlos Hyde had last year and 6 rushing touchdowns. That's great. The problem is there was only 10 receptions on 16 targets because all the pass work goes to Duke Johnson.
Okay.
And I don't have anything against DJ. Honestly, I missed the days when that guy was good. It was great. But, even last year, early on when he was having success, he was getting pass volume and he was in an offensive system that he's just not in now.
Here's my thing. I love Duke Johnson too, and he's a guy who we've always pounded the table for to get more opportunities. But everywhere he has been, every season, he has filled a particular role. And I don't know why that is going to change this season. I don't think his opportunities are going to be there. The volume, I don't think, is going to be there. I think it's going to be the same typical Duke Johnson volume that we've become accustomed to, no matter how frustrating that is. So,
but my point is that takes away all of that passing upside that bolsters David Johnson's performance.
You think Duke Johnson's going to get all the passing volume out of Houston and David Johnson's not going to get any?
I think he's going to severely limit his upside that he would have had as the lone RB in that Arizona Cardinal. If Kenyon Drake never happened, if Kenyon Drake was never a thing, and DJ was going into this season fully healthy in that offense, we'd be having a different conversation, brother. This is more about Bill O'Brien than anything else.
Well, yeah, I hear you, but no, but getting back to Duke Johnson, I'm probably going to sell him just because I think he's going to get typical Duke Johnson volume, and even though
that's versus an aggregate projection of RB 36.
Right, on an RB, yes, right. So I'm just going to sell him just because he'll have a few catches, he might get a couple carries, and he's going to be probably frustratingly efficient with those opportunities, and we're all going to say, see, he should get more, like every other Duke Johnson game.
So that's a sell for you,
selling.
Steve-O?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go ahead and sell too on this one, and I'm kind of in between both of you guys when, as far as like my Duke Johnson outlook in 2020 is, he certainly has a role, but I do think that Bill O'Brien, and maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but he hasn't had somebody with the passing, the pass catching chops that David Johnson has, somebody you can actually put in the slot and play as a big bodied Anquan Bolden type wide receiver. I don't know if that's still what DJ can do at this point in time in his career, but they might try anyway. So I do think that like David Johnson will siphon away from Duke Johnson so long as they're both healthy and available on the field. And to that point, I think in week 1, I really think Duke Johnson's just going to get underused, and that's what it comes down to me when it comes to selling him. I just don't think he'll get the work to get to, even what I do think is not an unobtainable aggregate projection whatsoever. But yeah, I'll go ahead and sell him for this week. Again, week 1 with the brand new toy down there in Houston.
Steve, I've said it once before. I'm going to say it again. You're really smart.
All right, Trav, what are you thinking? Buy or sell Duke Johnson at an aggregate projection of RB 36?
I'm going to be a sell on Duke Johnson. Once again, I just don't think he'll get the volume that's needed, just kind of like Hardman, This one thing is, when you're talking about David Johnson, is that, like this offense is going to fit David Johnson better than the Cliff Kingsbury offense did. Bill O'Brien's going to be out to prove a point that he made the right decision in trading for David Johnson, and he's going to send him out there, and he's going to pound him into the ground if that's what it takes. Might get a few good weeks. I mean, I know I sold David Johnson, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. I don't think it's going to be pretty at all. But Bill O'Brien's going to try to prove his point.
All right. Well, once again, I'm the Lone Ranger because I'm buying. Duke, you remember who loves you on Fantasy Foresight, the podcast. You know why I really can't stand David Johnson, Jay? Because my guy, Duke Johnson, was finally slated to get an increase to his workload. And what does dummy Bill O'Brien do? He trades the world for DJ coming off yet another injury-riddled season where he didn't even look right when he returned. Cool. Thanks, Bill. That said, Duke was 15th in running back targets last year, second in yards per touch, fourth in breakaway run rate, and DJ is injury prone. And I expect this to be a positive game script for Duke Johnson because the Texans will be down. They will be passing more than they typically intend to. And, you know, I think it's going to happen pretty quickly. I think Kansas City's going to jump out to a big lead. DJ will not see the bulk of the running back targets, in my opinion, and I think Duke will. So I'm buying my guy in week 1 versus an aggregate projection at RB36. You go get him, Duke.
And that's what it'll come down to, though, right, guys? Is like it will be very fascinating tomorrow night to see who stays out there on third downs. Like,
yep.
Will
and let's say I'm wrong about him having like his exclusive third down role like he did last year. I think in this specific week 1, even if DJ gets 75% of the running back touches, I think 25% of the RB touches are going to be a little bit inflated this week, and especially the passing volume because of the game script. Because Pat Mahomes, we all bought Pat Mahomes. We all expect him to just well, no, not all of us. Steve sold him. Everybody but Steve bought Pat Mahomes and expects him to light it on fire. And if that happens, I think the Texans are going to have to pass way more than they want to, and that's going to include Duke Johnson, whether they want it to or not.
I do have to say, though, then this is very important to plug in, and I had it in my notes, should have said it, but Duke Johnson, despite 94 pass attempts in the 2 games these teams played last season, Duke Johnson caught 7 passes. So combined in both games. So didn't get in the end zone on any of that and didn't see much of a run. So I just mean, like, even if it is a high scoring game, I don't necessarily think that's going to translate to Duke Johnson.
I think it's about targets and receptions, not necessarily touchdowns. I mean, I think if Duke
Ben, when I go undefeated in my picks, do I host the next episode? Is that how this works?
You can host anytime you'd like, brother. And you know what? I think, but Steve, 5 catches for 50 yards isn't going to be better than RB36. I think it has a good chance to be.
Well, 2 for 20 and 5 for 23.
Well, no, again, and neither one of those were Kansas City blowouts, and that is the difference where I think Kansas City is going to be comfortably ahead early and often in this game.
Is it sunny and nice on your DJ Island? Because it's pretty beautiful on my DJ Island over here.
Hey, me and Duke have been scrapping together for years, and I ain't going to stop anytime soon.
I got some like coconut drinks. I'm just hanging out, satellite.
That's all right. Yeah. Cleveland Browns for life, Duke. I remember you, brother. All right. Last up. On this podcast tonight, week 1, Houston Texans wide receiver Brandon Cooks. Is he even going to play? We don't know right now, and he's currently projected as wide receiver 42, even without the injury. Total Foresight did not like that and sells him as he's coming in at Total Foresight as wide receiver 51. So, you know, it's the biggest thing is that injury. Otherwise, maybe we would all think about this a little bit different. We could probably make this
pretty easy. Are we all selling a dinged up Brandon Cooks?
Yeah, I am. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, if he was healthy, I love Cooks. He's been a monster guy over his career, but you know, entering the season with this kind of injury, it worries me and his effectiveness as a route runner. So I couldn't invest anything in him beating any projection.
Yeah, absolutely. Questionable with a quad. You know, it's a lower leg injury for a guy who relies on speed, cutting, and precision route running. Like you can't buy into that. Oh, DFS, you'd avoid him all day long. You could be wasting your salary cap.
Right.
Trev.
I'm selling him. It's not even worth it right now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's so disappointing about this is I feel like we used to call Cooks the Iron Man.
I know, man.
And now these days he's feeling kind of injury prone, and it just makes me sad, man. Hey, we got our guy from our league of record, Mike, saying he only drafted Brandon Cooks because Jay is a Cooks fanboy.
I tried to trade for him too. I tried to trade for Cooks, and he shot me down.
That's awesome. Good job, Mike. Well, Trav, before we get out of here, do you want to plug Belly Up or any of your articles or anything like that, bud?
Oh yeah, I got some hot and cold takes and stuff coming out with some articles.
Awesome.
That'll be every week after the weeks are over with, and it'll be kind of like giving reviews of the highest scoring players of the week. So you'll see CEH on there next week.
Very nice, very nice, very nice.
A lot of the guys, they're pretty great over there, and they got a lot of great articles and stuff coming out too. And we're pretty in line with you guys, and we kind of think the same. And
fantastic.
We're a family just like you guys.
Awesome.
Very cool, man.
Love
It's been great having you on, Steve-O. Speaking of great articles coming out, I know Steve has already released his week 1 speculative stashes, and he is going to reveal all of them on tomorrow night's episode when we cover all of our buys and sells for the entirety of week 1 instead of just honing in on the NFL season opener. So, but first, Steve has got a couple of bonus speculative stashes that are playing in Thursday night's game that he wants to make you aware of before Thursday night football. Steve, take it away.
Yeah, and hey, for anybody listening, if you're not familiar with this weekly kind of write-up that I did last season, it's just basically, especially heading into week 1, you might have gotten out of your draft a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. You aren't very happy about that last guy that you drafted, last spot on your bench, and you're just like, it's literally what the acronym is JAG, for just another guy. And you're like, I could live without this guy on my lineups or in my lineup. So I just have like a list of guys heading into every week that after waivers run, you could go get them for free. Just pick them up, see if you can maybe cash in a lottery ticket heading into the next heading into, the upcoming week. That
I thought I was on mute. My bad, guys. Come on. Now that I've yelled at you.
But somebody that, would be a high priority waiver ad heading into the next week. And it's just always nice to get that secured on your bench so you're not having to waste a waiver priority or, use any of your fab money. So let's face it, we don't want to do that. So really quick, heading into tomorrow night's games, right now, I talked about him, mentioned him at least this evening. Darryl Williams, running back, Kansas City Chiefs, is currently only rostered in 15% of leagues and Yahoo leagues. Just because we talked about he is the trusted guy in pass protection, he will at least start out the season getting some work alongside of CEH. If you have a bench spot to burn, just go pick him up and stash him tomorrow night. The beauty of stashing a guy who's playing Thursday night, you could turn around and drop this guy and stash somebody else the very next morning. Yeah. But if something happens to CEH, God forbid, like I said, I don't think he's going to blow up tomorrow, but I love him season long. Hey, then you have somebody who's probably at least going to be projected as like an RB2 moving forward, at least in that offense. So totally worth a stash if you have a roster spot available. And then the other guy that I want to mention, and we talked about him a little bit earlier tonight as well, and that is Randall Cobb. He's only rostered in 11% of leagues, highly available that you can go out there and just add him. If Brandon Cooks play, to give you a little bit of a better idea how that offense would look, in a game where the game script's going to command that Watson throw the ball a lot. But even if Cooks is out, and that's kind of the whole point, right, is I think all three of these wide receivers, but Travis, you made a great point earlier. Randall Cobb's been healthier the last couple of seasons than he has been in a while. So, Fuller, he seems to miss time. Cooks might miss time already heading into 2020. He missed time last season. If we all think that Deshaun Watson is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy football, someone's going to have to catch the passes. And, it might be ugly, but in PPR, Randall Cobb. So just pick him up and stash him. See what happens anyways tomorrow night. You might be really happy you picked him up. And again, if not, drop him and go get another spec stash heading into the Sunday slate of games.
Love it.
Absolutely. Love it, man. I can't wait to hear about the rest spec stashes tomorrow. I apologize for yelling no into everybody's ear. I truthfully thought that I hit mute as this guy was chewing on one of my flip-flops. So everybody meet Riggins. He's a savage.
Riggins.
Yeah, absolutely. But anybody got anything else before we get out of here?
No, it's football time. Woo!
It Yes, it is. And Trav, thanks for joining us, buddy. It was great having you on. We'll definitely have to do this again sometime. Absolutely. And like we said, we are the rest of the season is going to be very consistent in our podcast schedule from now on. We are now going to be on every time Monday Night Football is on, every time Thursday Night Football is on. We will be here a little bit before kickoff to give you the buys and sells for the entire week one every Thursday. And then we are going to come back every Monday, review, see how we did. And in our preview episode, Steve gives you the speculative stashes that he just talks about so that you don't have just a guy on your bench. You've got some high upside guy going into your week. And then on the review podcast, that's on Monday night. So then you're going to listen to that Monday night, Tuesday morning. And I missed that, Trav. What was that?
Showing off the Bears shirt.
Oh, there we go. So Steve's going to be back, with you on Monday night, Tuesday morning to give you those waiver wire targets of the week, because everybody usually puts those in on Tuesday night. So we've got a fun season ahead of us, and this is the format we're going to do of our buys and sells. We're going to go through and track Total Foresight's accuracy, track Jay's, Steve's, and mine individually, and it's going to be a fun season. And it has not felt real yet to me. It's starting to feel real, man. And tomorrow we get real actual football. And by all accounts, it should be an exciting game. I cannot believe we are finally here after all this COVID madness. 2020 NFL season is here.
Ben, you said it well. It doesn't feel real. It's not going to until I see kickoff. And when kickoff occurs, I may shed a tear. Travis, love the Bears shirt. I really am excited for Nick Foles leading the Bears to the Super Bowl.
Couldn't even beat out Mitch Trubisky and Cam. Good job.
Dude, yeah, we'll see how long that lasts.
Yes, we will.
That's ceremonial for the first game.
Mitch Trubisky has a tendency to torch the Lions, and that's who he's got week one. So we'll be interested to see all of you Mitch Trubisky critics out there after week one. We'll talk about that. So we will be back with you tomorrow to preview all of our buys and sells for week one. Can't wait.
And that wraps up this episode of Fantasy Foresight, the podcast. We thank you for joining us. Be sure to visit us, as always, at fantasyforesight.com. Use the links at the bottom of the page to find us across social media, including Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you pod. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time.
Which I get David Johnson is, but no,
Steve just put DJ in the same category as Foles in fantasy relevancy. I love it.
Not even a starter.
Yeah, that's true. I